Welcome back to the shop, everyone. Today's episode takes place between October 18th and October 24th. In this episode, we are continuing on in the back of the car. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just grabbing my laser level because I want to make sure that that bottom floor pan that I tack welded is fully level in the car. And the best way to do that is with this laser level. I'm just putting it on the mount, kind of getting it off to the side so that when I'm in there working, I'll still be able to see the line pretty much the entire way across. And what I'll do is I'll just take some measurements from the top of the fuel cell cover to the floor and make sure that the line is where I want it. So that way the floor panel will be exactly the same height all the way across the fuel cell cover, which is what I want for aesthetics inside the car. So as you can see, I'm using my square just to make sure that the line is the same distance from the top of the fuel cell cover the entire way across. I'm grabbing these magnets to try and hold the floor in place on the line. Those magnets up top weren't working great, so I'm going to try and go from underneath and kind of get it in place. What I'm doing right now is I'm pushing the floor up so it's above the line, and then what I should be able to do is from above push down a little bit to get it where I want to get it. So now I'm just setting up my welder and I'm getting the camera set up for welding. When I'm welding, I'm wearing my welding helmet, so I gotta put you back on the tripod. So in this shot, you can kind of see that the laser is like bouncing off of the bottom, and that's because the plate is exactly where I want it and the laser is hitting it dead on. What I did here is I pushed it down too much, so I got to go underneath and push it back up, and Now that's all tacked in place, I'm happy with it. I'm just going to add a little bit more weld for strength. So I'm starting to fit in the passenger side plate there. I can get this all tacked in now that the floor piece is done. These magnets just kind of keep them level and together. Before I can do any sort of welding, I need to get all of that old sealer off of there. So I'm using a screwdriver, I had the air grinder out with a flap disc. Just doing whatever I can to get it out of there. What I'm doing now is just prepping the edges for weld, so just cleaning all the paint off of it and getting it down to bare metal. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking my level, my digital level, and kind of making sure that that plate is level with the at the same level as like the bar in the car. So if you're looking at it, it's going to look the same. And then just tacking in like I did everywhere else. So we're just continuing on with the driver's side panel. I'm just cleaning it up, getting the metal ready to do some welding. So you can kind of see on the side there's a fairly substantial gap between the two panels. For the most part, you know, you can fill small gaps, but that one's pretty big, and I really should have taken a lot more time when I was fitting this and made that a much tighter fit. It would have meant I didn't have to fill so much, and it would have just looked better and just been easier to work with in the long run. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just trimming that panel down a bit. As you saw, I had a little bit of marker because I just needed to make it a little bit shorter. And I'm just going to go back and forth and trim this down a little by little until it fits really well in there. You know, as I look back at this, what I should have done is where the frame of the car is, I should have drilled some holes in that panel and filled up and welded the panel right to the frame. I might go back and do that still. Time to get into one of my favorite things, shop cleanup time. You know, it's funny, you know, as I'm going through these old videos and recording and watching them, the changes that I've made to my shop are crazy, and some not so crazy. You know, like right now, none of my shelves on the wall or under the bench have shelves in them. They're just big, open, square cubes. But since then, I've actually put shelves in all of it and reorganized everything, and it just makes life a lot easier having a place, more space for your stuff. You know, when you're getting parts in and you're getting shop supplies, there's just a never-ending supply of boxes. Both good and bad. I mean, it's good because I almost always have templating material around. And, you know, if I'm working outside, I always have cardboard to throw down on the driveway. But it's so bad because there's just so much of it. And it's just so annoying sometimes. Alright, so now that the shop's a bit cleaner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking a look at how the passenger side rear inside quarter panel, I guess it's called. I'm not sure. But seeing how it's going to fit in there with the tubs. So first I got to take the speaker off because it's not going to fit anymore. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how this is even going to fit in there with the cage and, you know, everything. Is it even going to fit at all? I don't think it does. I think I dick around trying to get it in there from the back and the front, and then I just ended up realizing, like, the whole thing with the cage, with the mini tubs, is not going to fit in there. So yes, what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of measuring and trying to figure out where that panel is going to sit in the car, so I kind of know where I can start cutting. I'm going to try and piece together the back a little bit, just so that I know exactly where to start measuring and where to cut from and all that good stuff. I don't mind right on my bench top, because I know a little bit of acetone will take that off and you'll never see it. So here's my rough marks. You know, I've measured how far in it's going to be, how high up it's going to be, you know, from the back to the front, how much I want to cut. So that's my rough approximations there. Yeah, so I'm just drawing what I roughly think it's going to be. It was at this point I realized, Ben, don't be a dumbass. Make a template of the tub, and then you can transfer that pretty much exactly right to the panel. So there's no guessing, and you know that the cut's going to be accurate. And here you can see how wrong I was with my initial measurements. Holy crap, I was way outside. So I'm just so happy that I actually, you know, stopped and thought about this and, you know, rethought my plan and went with a template, because my original would have been way too big. Always gotta take pictures for the Instagram. Started cutting with my tin snips, and then I was like, this sucks. So I grabbed my electric shears, and I was hoping that this was going to be a lot easier and better, because, you know, all it's doing is just hogging out the material in the middle. And I figured if it can cut metal, it should be able to cut this plastic no problem at all. The tool doesn't do well on like sharp curves like that, so cut that out with the hand shear, and then I should be able to get the electric shear in there to do the most of the work. You know, at this point I'm realizing I may have been a little excessive on the back end. You know, I'm missing a bunch there, but we'll see how it goes when it sits in the car. So you can see right now it's still getting caught on the bottom. So what I gotta do is pull it out of the car, trim the bottom a bit so it fully fits in. This really is the nature of custom work. Put it in the car, mark it, take it out of the car, trim it, put it in the car, test fit, out, in, out, test fit. You know, this is all custom work is, just taking your time and making sure stuff fits right. Or in my case, making it fit right enough. So you can see it's kind of fitting in the car now. And one thing that I know I'm going to do is I'm going to end up putting carpet in the back. So I'm not too worried about the fit around the mini tub, because there will be carpet there that'll kind of hide any issues. But one thing I got to keep in mind is I need to get this battery box in the back of the car. So that's what I'm doing right now. You know, when I'm test fitting the panels in there, I want to make sure I can still fit the battery box in the car. Like this is the whole reason why I pulled that off the wall and I'm test fitting it, is to make sure that all of the things are going to fit in the car like I need them to. So right now I'm just looking and realizing that where the old gas tank filler neck went through, right there, is angled down and isn't really a good fit for mounting the battery box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all that old metal out, and I'm going to fab up a new piece to go in the back so that I have a nice flat floor pan all the way across, and then it'll bend down the side. So right now I'm just using some tape to lay out where I'm going to cut. You saw me look at the camera there. I'm actually looking at the GoPro because I wanted to know how much time I have left on the battery and the SD card. So every once in a while when you see me look at the GoPro, I'm just checking to see how much time is left and if I need to, you know, change the battery or go take files off the SD card, etc. So as you can see, I'm cutting all of those tacks that I made in the plate. And the reason for that is the chunk of metal that I want to pull off, that old fuel filler hole, the piece is mounted to, or it is welded to the frame, spot welded to the frame. And I also welded it to my new floor pan. So I just need to cut those tacks out so that when I'm cutting the rest of this out, it'll separate from the frame and then come out of the car. What I'm doing here is just cleaning up all the metal, getting it all flat, getting all those spot welds out of there, so that when I have the new piece ready, I can just put it in. I don't have to clean this up later. So earlier when I was working on the inner quarter panel plastic, I took all the paper off of my rear hatch, and because I'm doing some grinding and cutting and other stuff in that area, I want to put that paper back because those hatches are really hard to find, and when you do find them, they're super expensive. So I don't really want to damage it or do anything to it. So throw the paper in there, and if the paper catches a spark, who cares, as long as you're protecting the glass. Okay, so we're pretty much getting to the end of taping up the glass here, so I can continue on with the rest of the project. So what I'm doing here is, that's called desiccant, and that absorbs moisture from my air tools. So as all of the air runs through it, any moisture in the air gets absorbed into that desiccant, and then it'll change color. When the desiccant is fresh, it's blue. When it's used, it's that kind of light pinkish color. So what I do is, to regenerate the desiccant, I can put it in the microwave on low for 10 minutes, and that, removes all the moisture from it. I can put it back in, and I can do that about 6 times before the desiccant is fully used. So you can, from a little, 2-pound bottle, you can actually get a fair amount of desiccant use. So what I did is I just marked off the back area there to a square, because the piece of metal I'm going to cut, I'm going to make it a square because it's just easier to bend and easier to fit in there. And I'm also taking out that last chunk of where the filler neck was, because it was kind of bulged to the outside, and I just want to make it, that transition, just nice and smooth with a little bit of a 90 in the corner. So because that floor was uneven, what I was doing there with the hammers is trying to make it so that entire back piece is flat all the way across. And you can see what I'm doing there is I'm notching it out in the middle and along the edge, so I can kind of bend it and get that straight as well. So yeah, a bunch of this work is just finessing the metal and getting it where you need to be so that you can weld to it. What I'm doing here is I'm just pulling off the old exhaust hanger because it's not needed. When I do my new exhaust, it's all gonna be custom. It's not gonna use any of the stock mounting locations. Using the air chisel there just to remove some of the old what is that, sealer that used to be around the old filler neck. Yeah, so what I'm doing right here is I'm just cleaning the metal, getting it ready for when I get my piece, and you know, it'll just be all nice and fresh and clean. I won't have to do that later. I do generally like to work pretty clean, so I'll take the vacuum and I'll, you know, vacuum out all of the dirt and grime and, you know, all of the grinding and cutting dust. Just working in a nice, clean car, it just makes everything so much better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check on the driver's side what the floor pan does. And I see it's just a 90 down, so that's what I'm going to mimic on the passenger side here. You know, before I cut this out, just double and triple checking my measurement to make sure that it's right. I don't like wasting material, especially now in 2022 where metal has gone up so much. It's almost doubled in price since I shot this video back in, you know, 2021. So I definitely don't want to be wasting any material anymore. Now the gauntlet, I got to clean off the bench before I can use my brake. But that's just, you know, the nature of having a small shop where everything's not necessarily always put away or has a place. So, yeah, I'm constantly fighting with moving stuff and getting stuff out of the way so I can use my tools. And what I found here is that it was just way too long, so what I got to do is I got to cut a bit off one side so it'll go and sit down properly, because right now what's happening is the bottom is hitting the bottom inside of the quarter panel, so I need to knock a bunch off the side here. Yeah, it looks like I'm knocking off around 3/4 of an inch, so it was pretty long. Yeah, so that's fitting much nicer. It might not be perfect. I might need to cut it down a little bit more still, but it's a lot better than it was. Yeah, so I don't know how I messed that up so badly, but that is a massive, massive gap that I'm going to have to fill. And I kind of hate that I fucked it up that bad, but it is what it is. I fucked it up and, you know, just got to live with it. Yeah, so you just saw me setting up the welder, and now I'm just going to weld in that new panel that I built. You can see that the gaps along the side were really good, and you know, tacking that up was super, super easy, but that gap along the front, that's just trash. Looking at that, God, I did such a terrible job with that. I should have just redone that entire panel. If I was smart, I would have redone the entire panel. I mean, it's not impossible to fill that gap, but it's just going to take so much weld and then so much grinding afterwards that it's just, yeah, I should have just redone it and done it better the second time. I mean, I know this isn't going to be a show car and this is my first build, but man, that is just such a trash gap and I hate looking at it right now. I mean, as you can see, it's certainly possible to fill that gap, but this is not a good way to be doing this. I should have spent a little bit more time and just done it right. because by adding all that extra weld, I just have to grind it right back down to make it flush. So if you have smaller gaps, you don't need to add as much weld, which means that you don't have to grind as much. There's a saying, grinders and paint make me the welder I ain't, and that is definitely true for me. Yeah, so at this point in time, my die grinder had stopped working efficiently, and it was actually spewing water out. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting in brand new desiccant so that it'll absorb all of the air from the line. Because, you know, when your tools aren't working, it really sucks. And when the, die grinder is literally spewing water everywhere and your hands getting wet, it's just not a fun time. So yeah, just doing some test fitting, making sure the battery box is going to fit in there. With the back plastic, it wasn't great, but I'll make it work. So I'm just going to mark out the bottom holes, drill them out, and then I'll get the battery box in there mounted. So you can see there that the right ready rod is protruding past the hatch weather stripping. So what I'm going to have to do is pull these out and cut them down. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the lid lightly on there, mark out on the ready rod where I need to cut it, and then take it over to the bench and cut it. The threads on the ready rod weren't very good. I was having a hard time getting the wing nut on and off. So I grabbed my tap and die set, and I'm just using that die just to clean it up a little bit. I'm trying to figure out what size I need, and I believe it's 3/8 coarse. And I just want to confirm before I, rethread the whole thing. So just marking out where I'm going to cut these now. I'm just getting the die set up so that when I do cut it, I can recut the threads while it's in the vise. So now with it all cut down and all the threads cleaned up, we're ready to put it back in, test fit the lid again, and just make sure everything's going to work as I expect. So you can see I can get that outer wing nut on now, so everything fits nicely. It'll still allow the hatch to close, so everything's kind of exactly as I want it right now. So since that's one project, a tenth of the way completed, let's clean up the shop and just get everything organized again. I'm kind of tired of tripping over everything and walking over the welder and the bench being a mess, so cleanup time. Now that I've cleaned everything up, I'm just looking at getting back to welding that floor back in. So that's what I'm doing for the rest of this video, I believe, is just, prepping and welding in that floor.
it's supposed to feel.
Well, that concludes this video, and if you stuck around this long, I'd like to thank you for watching.